Welcome to the Cabin Culture Podcast, where we spend a little more time diving deeper into all the fun parts of cabin culture. We like to think of this as both the material and imagined expressions of how cabin lovers, dwellers, builders, designers, and dreamers wish to live a more simple and authentic life. On this episode, Janice chats with Taylor Hildreth, the host at Hilhaus AFrame, a new build in Crosby, Minnesota. In addition to a thriving AirBNB, Taylor does social media for other hosts, content creation for Airbnbs and hotels, and is also a stay-at-home mom. Taylor and her husband, Matt, an engineer by day, found mutual interest in travel and the outdoors early in their relationship, staying at different yurts and off-grid getaways, building memories along the way that inspired them to build their very own cabin. Janice and Taylor cover some of the well-timed financial strategies that contributed to funding their build, what Taylor looks for in the selective process of choosing influencers and what they can do to better deliver for the host, something Janice has recently dealt with, and plenty more to hear from Taylor's build and future plans, so be sure to stick around to the end.
I am so excited to be chatting with you.
Yes, we did it. I woke up and I have a sick kiddo, but she went down for a nap. So I'm like, okay, it works great.
Good. So we have an hour. What is she sick with?
She just like woke up and it's just like the head. So I don't know if it's like allergies or cold or what, but we've been traveling. And so it could be a mix of a whole garbage of stuff.
Yeah. We'll start. Oh my gosh, your hoodie. You posted about it yesterday on Instagram and I went down a rabbit hole on their website and I was eyeing the camp life sweaters to wear up at camp this summer. I loved them.
Nice. I love Soda. They send us stuff for the AFrame quite frequently, like cups and stuff. So they've been fun to work with. But yeah,
I never heard of them
check
before.
it all out today.
But now I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Why don't you start? Okay. Can you start by introducing yourself and your husband, where you live full time, what you both do in the real world? How did you meet? All the good stuff behind the AFrame. And then we will get to the Hilhaus.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'm Taylor Hildreth. My partner is Matt. He's an engineer. He does that during the day. So he's doing his engineering stuff. I wear multiple hats. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I do social media for AirBNB hosts. I run our own Airbnb, and then I also do content creation for Airbnbs and hotels. So that's what we do. We met in college, actually, the first day at North Dakota State University. Go Bison. I actually walked into his dorm room, and my roommate and I were friends with his roommate. So we kind of literally stumbled into each other's lives, and I never left as a joke. So it worked out well.
You are.
And here we are. We built in Crosby, Minnesota, which is about 2 hours from the Twin Cities going north. And we actually live up in that area. We live in a very small town called Merrifield. It's just outside of Brainerd. It's quite like a lakes destination, so you may know it from that. But most people, if you say Merrifield, even from Minnesota, have zero idea where that is. So I just say Brainerd at this point. But we're also flipping a house here. So we like to stay busy. Matt can't not have a drill or a hammer in his hand, which is what helped us build part of the Hilhaus ourselves. And I think I covered all of our things.
You really did. And I would say that build part of it yourselves is a little bit of an understatement because you're one of the first people we're talking to in the US. We've had a couple Canadians who built their own, who actually, you all pretty much built the AFrame yourself. No judgment for those who haven't, because we are obviously one of those who hired a builder and found that so much easier and quicker. But although I won't necessarily say quicker, because you all got yours done in record time while also working.
Yeah, we got it up. So like our builder got the frame up because we weren't putting 32 feet of up ourselves. And so they did that for us. Got it to the point of spray foam. And then we took it from there and finished the remainder of the build. I should say Matt finished the remainder of the build. I was pregnant with our daughter at the time and going through morning sickness. So
not fun. When you all first met, was cabin culture a thing that you had in common from the very beginning, or is it something that you discovered together?
We did have it in common, but in different ways. So he grew up in very, very northern Minnesota. And so the outdoors was his life. And so his dad actually built their family cabin. And so that was something near and dear to his heart. But their cabin is more, it has like water and everything, but it's more like off grid, very much in the middle of nowhere. And this was well before Airbnbs. It was very much like Minnesota resorts were cabin culture, from what I knew, because I grew up in the cities. I always wanted to travel. Matt was more of a homebody. And then once we started traveling, we found yurts. We found an off-grid cabin in Colorado where we spent anniversaries, birthdays. And so our love of that cabin culture really grew with our relationship and making those memories. And so those vacations and trips to those unique stays that we got to coordinate, maybe not coordinate, but to connect those memories with those moments in our lives, really was what fostered wanting to do it ourselves.
It's a good compromise for you guys because you wanted to travel. He liked the outdoors. So to find a way to travel that felt very outdoorsy feels like a way to like talk him into that.
Absolutely. So it was a great connection for both of us. He got a little bit, I got a little bit. So it's like our marriage. We all find our things, but it's great that we were able to do it together.
That's right. And what I find interesting is that you had traveled in a fair amount of Airbnbs, which is probably what planted the seed, but your AFrame was your first house. So it's not like you had a primary house first. You went all in, which is, I feel like what all the articles these days are saying, like millennials buy their vacation homes before their primary homes. What did those conversations look like between the two of you about the financial side of it and deciding to invest in an AFrame before necessarily a primary home?
Absolutely. So we actually flipped a house in the Twin Cities right out of college. So we found an estate sale home that had not been touched in 50 years, like the picture frame squares still on the wall when they took them off. They've been there so long. So we flipped that house before we moved to Colorado. And so we kind of were sitting on this pocket of money that we thought was going to be for our forever home. Didn't want to necessarily buy in Colorado. We didn't know where we wanted to be yet. Came back to the Twin Cities, still weren't really sure. But after staying in these Airbnbs and stuff, we're like, I think this is where we want to put our time and our money into. And bless my parents' soul, said, you guys can live in our basement. Will you do it? So we rocked the parents' basement again and built AFrame. Was where we put the money.
Yeah, but then you started renting it immediately. So there was like, this is why this is the piece. I mean, it's not totally left out of the conversation, but that's why people, I think, in a primary home, all you're left with after investing is mortgage payments, which you were paying already with rent. With a second home, if you can start renting it right away, then it's paying for itself immediately, if not making you money that you can then think about investing, in your case, into your primary home now that you're flipping.
Absolutely. So it worked out really nicely that we were able to save money on rent by living with my parents. We already had this down payment to put towards the AFrame. And it's also kind of, when it comes to the financial aspect of it, we were able to fund a lot of it in our build. So we had our loan with the builder, but we were also able to fund a lot of it through our savings, which was super nice. That everything that we were doing, it wasn't through a loan, it was through our own financials. So every time we went to Menards or Home Depot, like that was our funds to build it, because we had that. And so it worked out really well in terms of that build.
Yeah, and drastically changes the financials for those first like 10, 15 years, where most people are paying off a large mortgage payment, which is like $1,000 to $2,000 immediately cut out of any income that you're making. Now, the second piece of that is like, you were able to start renting it right away. And I think for a lot of folks, that kind of startup period can be really challenging. And a big part of that for you all, I'm guessing, I don't know this for sure, was the way that you documented everything through Instagram. And so when you started renting, you were like almost sold out right away. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think I found a balance of, I'd been doing Instagram kind of, but my 3,000 followers was fairly small compared to what Hilhaus grew into. So I enjoyed doing it. I worked in advertising for a few years. So I dabbled in that side of it. I did it for brands. And so I had seen success in like experiential marketing. And I'm like, if you're trying to sell an experience, we need to show that experience. And it was really important for me to show, or for us to show, the build, because we're like, if we can get people hooked on helping us pick the doors, helping us come shopping with us at Target or wherever we go for our furniture, people want to experience that because they felt like they were part of the process. And so it turned out really well, actually, that we went from about 300, 500 followers. And then people started getting hooked on watching the build, and we actually grew to almost 30,000 followers, which then I absorbed into my own Instagram account and restarted Hilhaus, so now we have 2 different accounts. But in total, probably between TikTok and Instagram, we probably have about 50,000 followers between my own stuff and Hilhaus's stuff, which really helps drive traffic to the A-frame. And so I always preach to people, they don't just start posting the day that you go live, because no one knows what's going on behind the scenes. I know it's hard, and I know a lot of people find it scary to show your face, but if you can show the heart and soul that went into the back end, you have so much more of a story to tell versus just going online and saying, okay, please book my place now. Which, yes, we do want you to book. If you invest in them, I really think that they invest back in you, which is super important in the online world and with Airbnbs and cabins and all of that.
If you're dreaming about a cabin build, or are in the midst of a build, or you just bought a place and are getting ready to host for the very first time, regardless of where you are, sometimes you just need a little help along the way. Shared experiences from someone who's been there, advice from someone who's learned a lot of lessons the hard way. That's me. Or a cheerleader as you finish up. All of these reasons are exactly why I started offering cabin consultations to our Instagram followers and friends who could use some specific one-on-one help. I can't promise to solve all your problems, but I can promise to be transparent about our build costs and process, our organization and project management systems, our favorite and least favorite tools for renting, how we market, and how we found ourselves with almost 80,000 Instagram followers and 100% occupancy in our first year of hosting at Cozy Rock. So if that sounds like it might help you, feel free to visit us at staycozycabin.com or on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin and sign up for a time to chat there. Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because there is a lot of pushback about putting yourself on camera. And I've heard that from a lot of folks. I know that you have, and you're now working with people, consulting them. When you started it though, did you know that putting your face on camera was going to be important? Was that a conscious choice you were making? And how hard was it for you at first? How did you get to a place where that was really comfortable?
Absolutely. I think with my own personal page, I hated it and I never did it. For Hilhaus, it felt so different. It didn't feel like I had my friends out there judging me, like my own personal page, like, oh, look at what Taylor's doing today. But I felt like it was like my brand that I was promoting. And so to me, it was like a marketing expense, just not monetary. It was like, no, you're going to put yourself out there and you're going to do this. And then eventually it kind of felt like I did it so often, it felt like no one was out there. Like I was just talking to my phone and whatever. Sometimes but then you'd see the DMs of people being like, oh, I love car time with Taylor, because it usually ended up being Fridays that we were driving up to the A-frame. People knew to expect me to hop on and talk about what we were doing that weekend. And so approaching it as like no one's there, the people who care will tune in and then they'll tell you that they're tuning in. And so it almost gets easier when you feel like there's a couple out there that are expecting you to show up, and then it makes it easier to show up. And so I know the first few times I'm like, oh, I have to have makeup done, I have to have my hair done, I have to have the things done. And then by the end, it's like half a bun on the side of my head with a drill in my hand. I'm like, hi, we're still here. I promise we're getting there. But it just gets easier and easier over time. And it almost just becomes funny because it's kind of like a reality show, right?
Yeah.
TikTok and everything. The reason why people like it is because they feel like they get to watch someone's lives. And so it's kind of like our TV. It's kind of like our TV nowadays.
How do you give advice to folks who don't feel comfortable doing that? Because I do think there's a difference. I don't know when I found you and where you were in your comfort level, but you seem so comfortable on camera, which made it really enjoyable to watch. I have seen other accounts, and I'm not talking about cabin accounts at all, where someone puts themselves on camera and it's clear that they're not comfortable, which is also totally normal. But that almost can feel a little bit uncomfortable to watch, because you're like, oh, they're very nervous. So how do you help people get through? But I also feel like if you don't put yourself in that position where it is hard, you're never going to get to a place where you are comfortable. So how do you coach people through that beginning stage?
Absolutely. So I have a couple right now that I'm working on, that I'm helping run their socials. And we've been looking at how to support growth, just because posting your Airbnb photos just doesn't cut it anymore. We've been working on, they're not comfortable with their face, but what we're doing is they're holding their phone, they're either scanning their property or they're talking about the artwork in their place, or we have an A-frame rental and they're going over their A-frame. Here's how we saved money. But instead of them having to show their face, they're showing the product. And so we then just add the voiceover after. So you still hear the voice, you still see exactly what we're talking about, but they don't need to put their face on the camera. And I feel like that allows you to speak, but you don't have to be constantly like worrying about what's going on here. Like, does my face look dumb? Do I not have makeup on? Do I have my hair look a mess? Like, it's a good starting point. The other great way to start is you can speak it all out, but then type it up. Have it be your caption, have it be your story. Or TikTok is really nice because it will audio filter it for you. And so if you're really not comfortable, you can, on TikTok, you can type in your text and hit text to audio, and they'll give you a little fake voice. So they're a little ridiculous too, but it still puts your personality and your wording behind your content. And so there's a lot of different ways to approach that.
I love that. Even thinking about like, if you have someone take your picture when you're working on the cabin or whatever, like those in action photos and then do voiceover, it's still telling that story without the discomfort of holding your phone up in front of you and talking to this invisible audience, which I feel like is part of what makes it really uncomfortable. Is that I remember when I first started doing it years ago, someone I shared a studio with referred to my voice as sing-songy. And I like watched back like a YouTube video I made, and I don't know that I think it was sing-songy, but it was like a phone voice. You know how like you get on the phone and you have like a different voice. And I started being really aware of that and like, okay, how do I talk to this camera as if it's a person who's standing right there instead of putting on my phone voice, which does make it feel a level removed from authentic conversation as if someone's just in the room with you. But I do think it takes work to get comfortable with that. And maybe voiceover is a good way to do that in the meantime.
Yeah, and I think with voiceover, you remove I think so many people are called to hop on and be like, hi, friends, or hey, everybody, or like that kind of stuff. And if you think about it, it probably is a little bit of a turnoff for a lot of people because you're being called to the fact that someone's trying to get your attention versus them just being like, you will not believe what happened today. Now I want to listen to what happened today. And so the voiceover kind of cuts that out because you don't feel the need to like introduce yourself.
Oh, that's such a good point. Even what I see all the time is like, just popping on here for, or sorry, I haven't been on for a while. And it's like, if you just skip the apology and just be on in that moment, it kind of like changes the dynamic. You just feel like you're hanging out with a friend who's like updating you on what's happening.
Yeah. And I get it so hard. I was a teacher and I did hey friends to them. And so I felt like for the beginning, every time I came on, like, hey friends. And eventually I was like rewatching our Q&As. And I'm like, I say hey friends 80 million times. We got stuff.
Yes.
So I get it.
Oh yeah. And I still do the like just popping on sometimes. And I have to catch myself and be like, why are you doing that? Like, what are you doing? Just, but it is just like a weird dynamic. But I think to your point that you made a minute ago, when people start replying to those messages and start expecting updates from you, it is like this really helpful feedback loop where you're like, okay, me taking the time and discomfort to show up here is helpful to people. And so then that gets you on the next time and the next time. And I found during our build, it was during COVID. And so we were like really isolated. So the extrovert in me loved that human interaction, but also it was so helpful. There were so many things that I didn't know the right answer to. And if I put it on Instagram, I'd get 20 different responses to it. And I could figure out like which of these seems to make the most sense for us. And I wouldn't have known those people otherwise. I didn't necessarily have friends who were like electricians who could give me thoughts on something, you know? And so it
Absolutely.
Even if you have 500 followers, like I think I got more input when I had less followers early on. So don't let that stop you. I think even just having 500 people in a room is a lot of people who have different insights that can help you. And I just think that feedback loop will keep you doing it.
Oh, absolutely. Even if it's just a few, just knowing someone's out there who cares, because it can be easy to talk yourself into like, okay, my mom is the only person out there who is cheering me on sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. I do want to talk more about this marketing piece because I feel like on a lot of our podcasts, it's great to get to know the humans, but I also love having like tangible, helpful things. And this is the thing that we get asked about the most. And I actually don't feel like I'm a marketing expert or have great answers for folks. So I'd love to like even just improve my own repertoire a little bit with what people, when people ask, but like, what other tips do you have? Okay. So showing up on camera is one big one that I've definitely heard positive feedback on. What are some other tips that you give folks if they're planning to use their Instagram as a tool for booking and marketing?
I think the biggest one, and this is going to be, it may be a hard sell with some people, but I truly believe in content creation and influencer marketing. It has to be done right. And I'm going to say that 12,000 times. You can't just anyone who asks for a stay work with. That's not a strategy. There needs to be a strategy behind it. But in today's day of social media, there are 95 million posts a day. You need to be able to cut through the noise. And a lot of times, if you already have a page, if you're not doing a build where you're starting from the ground up, if you don't have a unique spin where we bought a motel and we're flipping this motel, you need to find a different way to cut through that noise. And a lot of times that content creator can do that. They can get you that drone footage. They can get you that lifestyle content. They can get you more video. And so I think that's super important to have, even just once a quarter, because eventually you can start recycling that a little bit and it doesn't have to be this constant marketing funnel for you, but it's such a great piece. And there's just a lot of people that don't know the camera settings or that kind of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're just put your time where you know your time is best used. If you don't want to figure out social, don't figure out social. There are so many people out there who have now made it their job that would love to help you be successful. And so I truly believe in that marketing piece. I also think just little tips of knowing call to actions or
Wait, we're not done with influencers. We
sorry.
will move to those next. I have
No, you're
questions
good.
on the influencer.
You're
I'm a big fan of hiring photographers, which we've done a lot of, and like knowing exactly what you're getting. I have had less luck with influencers, so I'm curious. And just this past week on one of our properties, we got burned, in my opinion,
Oh no.
by an influencer sort of. How and I've talked to other folks where we're getting tons of pitches in our inboxes for UGC or user generated content. How do you recommend we approach this to figure out who's the right fit and how to like set up a situation that is win-win for everyone?
Absolutely. Okay, this is multiple parts here. We'll start with let's just talk about how I like look at who's going to be a best fit, right? So I know for a fact that my general audience for the AFrame is a 3-hour radius from Hilhaus. We don't get a ton of like travelers to us. It's a lot of like Twin Cities, maybe Wisconsin type travelers. We may have a rogue one from Texas or California, but it's not worth my time putting my energy towards that in terms of marketing. And so when someone sends us a pitch, they need to have a media kit straight up. I need to know who your audience is, what your engagement rate is, like what content do you do? Obviously, I can look at that, but when I get pitches upon pitches in my inbox, I don't have time to go scour your page to see the content of yours. Like, show me your best work in a page or two.
Yep.
And so I want to see that you have a high engagement rate. I want to see comments that are not just heart emojis. I want to see someone being like, I just Minnesota and I'm looking for the best place to travel kind of content comments. I think a lot of influencers have other influencers where everyone just comments on each other, which is great, but that doesn't mean that they're the traveler that I'm looking for. And so some of that information is going to be super important. The general age range, we have either small families or couples that come and stay with us. And so that 26 to 35 is really our core. I want to see that your age range is 26 to 35, maybe even a little higher that. I really don't need younger than that. And we just haven't seen anyone older than that be attracted to Hilhaus. And so we try to find that marketing in terms of the age range as well. UGC, I'm not saying it can't work. I personally want exposure. I do a lot of the marketing myself. I do a lot of the photography myself. I don't necessarily need more content for me to use. So UGC just doesn't provide a value for me. There may be someone who's like, I have a decent amount of followers. I just need that refresh of content where UGC may be beneficial to them. I just think there's a lot of copy and paste UGC pitches out there from TikTok that people are buying. And so I have a hard time getting on board with that. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm sure there's some great ones out there. I just haven't come across it as much as quote unquote content creators. But I do think there's some content creators who are niching in AirBNBs specifically photography and videography for that. And I think those are the gold standard. Those are really what you want to be looking for. I mean, you have your Dirt and Glass, you have your Ethan, like you have your Levi. Those are the people who started it all, right? I think there's some more that are kind of up and coming in that space. And I think that's really what you want to be looking for is, do they have an eye for photography? Are they slapping filters on their stories? Or are they actually taking quality footage of their stories and real footage for you to utilize? And so it's a lot of pieces and it definitely takes some work. But I do think when done right, it can be super impactful.
Is there anything you can do if someone comes? I'm not asking for me or anything, but if someone comes and just like really does not meet the expectations that you had. I mean, I think one takeaway for me is that I really do it less for the exposure and more for the content because we live so far away from ours that I just need constant content so that I can keep posting on Instagram. And so when I get requests from influencers, my question is always like, what kind of content are you going to deliver to me? Like, great, if you post it over there, that's fine. But I really just want the content. And this last one, we got delivered like 10 iPhone photos was what was delivered. And I was just like, okay, my photos are better than this. And it's just not enough that this doesn't like do anything for me. And it was a 3-night stay. And so I'm like debating how to follow up because I feel like they're pitching themselves to lots of other people all the time. And I feel like they should know that this was a very underwhelming experience after having worked with other influencers and photographers who like exceeded expectations. You know, I've just seen a lot of people really do it right. Shout out to like Dirt and Glass, Ethan, Eat Curiel is my favorite. I still don't know if I say his name right, but anyway, like we've seen lots of good ones. What would you recommend someone do? And have you run into this? What did you do?
We have not run into it. I think we have now done 4 days in that realm, just because with the last few years, we've just been super blessed with great retention rates of our AFrame. And so I broke my own rule. I kind of laid back on the marketing. And now, of course, this year's a little bit slower for us. And I'm like, oops, hop back on this train. So we've only done 4. We had a ton of pitches at the beginning. And we found one super hyper local Midwest person, not so much for content, but for posting. She made a reel, a blog, delivered some content. And so that worked out great for us. And then the 2 others were photographers and they delivered the one photographer who came and gave us like 100 photos. And
right?
That's just like, just next level, like did not even expect it. Right. And so I truly believe in the over delivering of all of that. And so it's a bummer when they don't.
Like 10 photos from your iPhone? Like what were you doing for 3 days?
Well, and it hurts my heart so much when some people unfortunately have to almost like ruin it for everybody, because that's a lot of money on you that you're 100% booked. Like you could have been used for other things.
Yeah, luckily this was our camp up in Northern Maine and it was in April.
Okay.
So it feels like I knew it was a risk, but it felt like, okay, we're probably not going to book those 3 weekdays in the middle of April. For Cozy Rock, I'd be way pickier.
I was thinking of Cozy Rock.
Yeah. Yeah. For Cozy Rock, we actually don't do many anymore. And when we do, they're ones that we've picked out and hired. And honestly, it's a lot of the same photographers because we just know that they deliver good stuff.
And that's exactly what you want. And I think that's why you see a lot of the same people over and over again, is just because when you trust someone, it's hard to give your stay away to someone new, not knowing exactly what's coming back your way. I think unfortunately the best thing you can do, it stinks, but they can't go back and you probably don't want them to go back to get more content for you. And so, but I think there's a level of honesty, just like the review system, of emailing them and saying, I appreciate you coming and find a compliment. We always joked when we did like conferences when I was a teacher that we had to like compliment sandwich, like give them a compliment, slide into like, here's the deal though, and then be like, I wish you nothing but the best in the future. Bye.
Wishing you all the best.
Yeah, but I think it's important to know that maybe they thought that was the expectation. Maybe they truly didn't know better, but they do kind of need to be told that, hey, that's not okay either. Like this is my business and we did this as a business partnership. But I also think I won't do it without contracts anymore of clearly defined deliverables of this is what I expect and these are the due dates, and vice versa. When I do it for hosts, I make sure there's a contract in place, just because I never want to I always try to over deliver anyway, but I never want someone to feel like left, like they lost something or
I
they
totally
missed out
agree.
on something for their stay. I also think talking ahead of time, I love talking about marketing goals. Like, what are you looking for? If they're looking for exposure, I'll make sure that our contract focuses more on posts on my page. If they're like, I just don't have any content, then maybe I spend more time taking Reels footage for them. They may not see as many posts on my page, just time wise, but I'll deliver a whole album of coffee shots and reading and sitting out on the deck or the patio. And so I think I'd like to hope that a lot of people who are really doing this as a business, who also get a benefit by staying, are looking at how can I support the host, not how can I get a free stay. I think that needs to be the biggest question being asked.
I know. I feel that way too. We did our first trade where we stayed at a place in Virginia and in return created content for them. It's not something that I want to like do as a primary thing, but it was a good opportunity. So we did it. And I was
Mm-hmm.
so nervous the whole time about like, is the sunlight going to be right? Is the weather going to be good? Am I going to be able to fly the drone? Like desperately wanting to like deliver content for them that was going to be really helpful.
Yeah.
And ended up delivering, I think like 120 edited photos with a professional camera, used my drone, made a cabin tour video for them to pin on their page, and then shared a bunch of video clips that they can use in their own reels. Because that's what I would expect if someone stayed for 3 days at
Mm-hmm.
my cabin for free. And we still had time to enjoy the cabin. It's not like that was all that I did. So that's why when I got these back, literally a couple weeks later, I was like, wait a minute. Like, I know how long it takes to take 10 iPhone photos, and it's not very long. So I don't know. It
Yeah.
made me nervous now to do any more in the future.
It's really hard. I think there's a shifting narrative of you have to get paid, like on the creator side, like you should be being paid to do this. It's a I've been joking with one of my friends that it's the Wild West. Like there's no gold standard or whatever for anything. And so trying to figure out, am I delivering too much? Am I not delivering enough? I want to do enough work, but also I don't want to be taken advantage of on my end, or as a host, I
Hmm.
don't want to be taken advantage. And it just seems like there's never ever spiraling like tornado of what's the best way to do it. But I think you can definitely deliver some photo, some video easily and still enjoy a stay. You're sitting by a campfire anyway. Pull your phone out for 5 minutes and put it on a tripod and capture that. Like,
Right.
even if you're just doing the iPhone, I understand everyone's at different levels of talent. And that's why that marketing talk is just so important. Like, what are you capturing specifically as you, a creator, for the host? Because everyone's at a different level. But I do think there's nothing wrong with over delivering. I've also seen pitches come in where like I'll give you usage for 1 year. And I'm like, I can't keep track of when you came and stayed and when that year is up. And so like right there, that's out for me. Cause I'm like, I'm not negotiating usage with you. I'm not a huge billboard brand that is using this across the nation. I'm using it on my Instagram page. And so I do think it's a tricky balance of finding it all.
Yeah.
But contracts and media kits and a marketing goals talk, I think, are going to be your biggest help in finding the right people.
I really like the marketing goals talk of having, if they don't bring it up, but initiating, because then you also get to meet them and talk ahead of time and be like, here are the priorities. Here's how we typically use content so that they can operate within knowing how you're going to use that stuff. I think that's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where does the Hilhaus stand right now? I noticed you said it's gotten slower this year. I want to say I don't know that that's necessarily a marketing thing. Almost everybody that I've talked to recently is commenting, and I think I've talked about this on a lot of the podcasts, but I do think that that's just general trends of us like returning to
Yeah.
normal after COVID. But how is the Hilhaus going, and what is your next project? Is there a next project? I know you're working on your house right now, but like, where are you going with Hilhaus in the next 5 years?
Absolutely. So honestly, Hilhaus was still fine. It was just when you're sitting on a 86 to 92% occupancy rate, going down to 50, 60 is like, oh. But it's still good. July, we only have 2 weekdays open. But aside from that, summer is pretty well booked, which it always is. So we're coming into high season, which is great. Fall always does great. We have really pretty fall colors up by us, and we do a lot of mountain biking in our area. It's a very popular activity too. So we're going into high season, which is like kind of like a breath because you saw that pick up. I was like, just the spring is always slow, and I knew that. But like when it's really slow, you're like, I hope the summer isn't slow too. So,
Yep.
but it's good. It all leveled out. It's the ebbs and flows, but I do think this year is definitely a year that everyone needs to, it's a great year to look at. Do I need to be doing more marketing? Is it now the time that we add a hot tub or a sauna, or like this is the kind of year to look at that kind of stuff. So for Hilhaus specifically, we want to add a sauna so bad, sauna, sauna. So that's the next thing we'd like to do there. We'd like to get a barrel sauna at some point. We're looking into the best place to put it, but we think an added amenity is only going to help those winter or slower season bookings. For our next project, the house that we're flipping is actually on 32 acres, and we bought 2 parcels. So one of our parcels is 6 acres, and so our goal is to put up 2 tiny cabins on that 6-acre parcel. Once we get this house updated a little bit, as you can see, my half-finished fireplace behind me. But so we're finishing our own space a little bit first, and then we're looking down the road at potentially 2 tiny cabins. And I'm keeping my eye out across the road. There's a lake lot that's for sale. It's been sitting there for a little bit. And so I'm trying to talk my husband in, or talking Matt into nabbing the lake lot as well for more acreage and another 2
And
tiny
waterfront.
cabins, so. We don't have waterfront yet, and that was the goal from the beginning, but it just didn't work out the first time. So, so we'll see. But we never stop looking. It's just one of those things that we sit on it until we're ready to pounce. Then when we pounce, we fly. So we have a couple of plans. So we'll see which one actually becomes the next baby. But we're hovering over a couple of ideas right now, which is fun.
Hi guys, Sean here, host of Chalet. The dreaded mud season of Vermont is finally drying out, which means it's time for all the spring and summer activities you've been missing out on this winter. And what better place to stretch the legs and breathe in some green mountain air than southern Vermont? Let me share with you my usual routine when I pack a bag and head to the A for the weekend. First things first, roll the windows down and let the fresh air in. I don't know what it is, but for some reason you can feel and smell when you cross the Vermont state line from Massachusetts. What's a road trip without a coffee and a pastry though, so before you make the turn up the big hill into the farmland, pull over at Shelburne Falls Coffee. Next, enjoy the winding 2-lane drive up and over the mountain and through the small Vermont towns with a podcast or your favorite playlist on. If you're hungry, make a pit stop at American Flatbread in West Dover for a slice of za and some local Vermont beer. One final stop to grab a bottle of wine and some cheese and a few supplies at the general store, and 10 minutes later you're pulling off the paved road onto the gravel right away that leads you up to Chalet. With the car in park, I hop out with a big stretch, toss my bag inside, and kick back in one of the chairs on the deck to enjoy the last bit of sun before it sets. With some snacks and a glass of wine, I toss on my most recent audiobook and light the fire pit and let my mind wander as the sun sets before tucking into bed for the night. But by far, my favorite thing is to wake up early as the sun is rising and sit on the front deck with a hot cup of coffee as fog and dew burns off the grass and out of the woods. With the whole day ahead, it's just tough to decide between hiking, biking, paddling, fishing, or exploring by car all the fun spots we have just 10 minutes from the A. If this sounds like your kind of trip, hop on over to the booking link in the show notes or shoot us any questions you might have about the area. Okay, back to the show.
Are you looking at tiny house plans, and are you going to build those yourself as well?
I really like the Den Outdoors tiny A-frames. I think our clientele is definitely the younger couples. And so if we can be a little bit in that lower price point, still attract the couples, but be a little bit more cost effective, that's going to be a huge thing for us. So I think we may look at those Den Outdoor tiny A-frame plans. And then the goal would be to build those ourselves because they're only about 10, 15 feet high. We should be able to do that ourselves with the materials and tools we have. So it would just be a cost effective option for us to put up and more cost effective for renters as well, which is a win-win across the board.
Yeah, there's the Desert of Maine is a location right near us in Freeport, and they built, I think, 3 of those Den Outdoor mini A-frames last year. And Ethan documented it video wise. So you should talk to him. He's like seen them. You might
Ooh.
have already seen one in person, but he actually like, I think documented the building of them. I've driven by them and they look like amazing. They're so compact and functional in such a small space.
And I love that they have a bathroom and a kitchen inside. So I feel like a lot of times when you shrink them, you then are doing like a bathhouse. And
Yep.
just personally, I don't want to go to the bathroom in the middle. Like I don't want to leave my place in the middle of the night. And so I don't want to get too small that we go to the bathhouse or like campground glamping-esque realm. So finding that balance for us is gonna be fun. But yes, that's exactly what I'm looking at. So now I'm gonna have to go creep on that.
Yeah, do it. You should message him and ask about it. I bet he has some stuff he can share. What lessons are you going to take into these next builds from Hilhaus? Like, what are some things that you're definitely going to do differently?
I'm getting an interior designer. That is what I'm getting. I just stressed over the design of it and I think it turned out fine. I feel like I've spent so much money in the after the fact things where I just could have invested at the beginning. But like even just bedding or like the pads for the bedding, like just all of those little things that you were like, when you get to the end of the build, the easiest thing is to be like, we are out of money. And unfortunately, that's when the design comes to life. And I'm like, but this is what sells your place.
Yeah.
And so I felt like we went a little less on the furniture for some of the pieces. And then I ended up going back and rebuying duvets and sheets and throw pillows and all of this kind of stuff that I wanted to just like update and make it more luxurious. And I'm like, okay, I just spent double the amount of money because I bought lower quality stuff that I now don't use to put up new stuff to then just all of the things. And so that was a huge thing. Not that everything has to be super expensive. I swear by my $7 Costco towels. They're huge, they're amazing, and they're fluffy. So not everything has to be break the bank, but from the design piece, the stuff that's being photographed, the stuff that's being marketing, I want someone to take it off my plate and feel like it's being taken care of, but just walk in and be like, yep, this is it. And I just feel like I'm not there with Hilhaus yet.
I can so relate to that because I had to acknowledge a long time ago that I love interior design. I feel like I have a good eye for what looks good, and I just do not have the skill to pull it all together. And that's where I think, I mean, A-frames in particular, we've talked about this a lot recently, like wood tones is a huge challenge in cabins because there's so much wood. And so how you match a side table with a coffee table with floors with potentially walls that are all wood, how do you make that work? And that's where my interior designer was such a help. She's like, you cannot have a wood coffee table. There's already too much wood. So we're going to go with a cement round one, which I would never have picked out for myself in a cabin, but it goes so well with all the other wood, you know? And that's where it's just pulling it all together is so hard.
It's all the pieces, but yes, especially the wood tones, because there's 12 different, I mean, there's more than 12, but there's so many shades. And you're like, this is kind of close, but it's not the same. Is it going to flash or is it going to match or is it going to,
That's right.
Yeah, it's a nightmare that I'm going to let someone else handle for me.
Yes.
So I think the biggest thing is we can do a lot of things ourselves. I think Matt and I need to be better at saying, but we're going to ask for help on certain things. And so that's probably going to be the biggest thing is let's acknowledge what we can do and be grateful that we can do it. But like, let's also be okay passing some things off to someone who's going to do it better and do it right for us as well.
That's right. Okay. We have like 10 minutes left. And
Cool.
I have been collecting in recent podcasts a list of hot topics. No right or wrong answer, but very debatable topics. And I'm curious to get your stance. These do not have to be rapid fire style because I just feel like it's impossible to like explain how you feel about it rapid fire. But I have 3 of them highlighted. One of them we already talked about, which was influencers and user generated content. So we're going to skip that one. I'm going to add another one. Let's start with direct booking. Pro or con?
I think I'm pro it, but this is why they're hard, right? Is because you can't go to direct booking and expect people to come to you. You need to have a solid marketing strategy set up first. And so I don't have I have an email list. I have done nothing with my email list. I cannot invest in direct booking until I figure out how to effectively utilize my email list. And so I'm pro it when it's done right. when you're ready to do it. I think Airbnb is a great marketing platform for us. But when you can go direct booking, it's very nice. But I definitely, again, Wild West.
What are
you're
the
learning it.
advantages of direct booking though?
I think from the outside, a lot of people have a negative connotation of Airbnb. And so when you say the words direct booking, they immediately go, oh. I've had guests who have booked through Airbnb use my phone number that is attached to my Airbnb account, saying, if by chance you ever wanted to go direct booking, we would cancel our reservation, take the loss on our fee, and still direct book with us just because they had a bad experience with Airbnb. And so I don't think I'll ever rely on direct booking 100%. I don't think I'll ever leave Airbnb. We're not on Vrbo, we're not on Booking or anything else. We're only on Airbnb. But I do think I don't like having all my eggs in one basket. And I do, from a control perspective, like being able to control my own platform, even if it just sits there and it only gets used once in a blue moon.
Yeah. Okay. It's so interesting because I just like can't leave Airbnb, and we have an email list and almost all of our bookings come from Instagram. We use our email list to open our seasonal calendars. We use it to fill any last minute cancellations and it works really well for that. So it's like we're utilizing those things, but I still just find it feels so much safer to me to be through a platform that has some accountability and has a review system and has a company that, even if it's not 100% perfect, at least there's something that I can reach. If something goes wrong, there's someone that I can reach out to. Whereas with direct booking, there's no one. You're totally in it alone.
Yep. I think Matt would disagree with me on that one. From a marketing perspective, totally see direct booking. Matt loves that Airbnb handles it. Our Airbnb is fairly hands-off. Like, everything's so automated and taken care of. Airbnb makes it so easy for you. And so he would be the one to be like, don't let a few bad stories scare you into direct booking. But
that's how I feel. I just feel like it's being pushed everywhere though for hosts and every podcast and every consulting and course. And I just, I've thought about it a bunch and I just can't, there is no argument that's been compelling. Anyway, really helpful to hear your perspective. What about short-term rental regulations?
Ugh, don't even get me started on this one.
Oh, get started.
So our area is in a lot of talks about this right now. Just ebbs and flows, pros and cons. So it comes up quite a bit. I can be pro regulations, but they have to be able to work with me, right? So I understand that there are a lot of people coming in. You go down a rabbit hole of investors just buying up towns. Like, I get that. And I don't want to be the problem of someone else's life. And so I'm so for them saying you can only have one in an area, maybe. Or I want you to get your septic checked, or you need to make sure that the noise ordinance are followed. Like, essentially a good neighbor short-term rental regulation. Keep your house clean, make sure it stays up to date. Don't make your neighbors mad. Even if you had to pay for a permit to make sure you're fine, I don't care. I will happily be a good neighbor to my community and support them the best I can. When they just come in and just say, you're out, without sitting down and having a conversation, that's hard for me to get on board with, because there's no one sitting and talking about it. It's just a couple of people on a board who either had a bad experience or don't have a preconceived notion about it, that are now just trying to, it's someone else's business too. So I don't know. That's why I always say unincorporated, build an unincorporated, or make sure you sit down and meet your community, your mayor and your council beforehand, because I think them seeing your face goes a long way and knowing the story a little bit versus just thinking you're a builder.
Yeah. What was the first thing you said?
Going in an unincorporated or a township that doesn't have regulations.
I've never heard unincorporated.
I think that's what Matt calls it, because we looked at, there's one chunk of land just outside of the Brainerd area. Brainerd is super strict because there's so many resorts. But like, you take a step out and there's a big chunk of land that is under our county, but like not under our county. And so it's kind of free territory right now in terms of short-term rentals. So
Yeah. So picking the location carefully based on what's there. It just feels like every place is examining regulation. So figuring out what it's going to be in 3 years versus right now is tricky. And if you're investing all your money in it, and then like what happens?
And I think, but I do think you need to realize, or I think the towns probably don't realize, but our cleaning teams, our handymans, the communities that build the brewery in town, those are people with businesses that rely on tourism. And so not only are you closing one Airbnb, you're really hurting. I think the detriment of just going in and shutting down a whole community without really thinking about the ramifications is much bigger than just hosts. And so I think there needs to be a balance. I'm fine playing the game a little bit and finding a balance, but it does have to be a balance.
Yeah, that's right. Cameras. What are your thoughts on cameras?
We have a Ring doorbell, and we only have a Ring doorbell. I make it very clear it's not actively monitored. I do not care when you get there. I don't care how many times you come and go. I don't need to see how many people are coming in the door. I trust you as a guest and your reviews and all of that to be a good Samaritan. I use my Ring doorbell to see how much snow fell, to make sure our local bear Honey, who likes to tip over our trash can, did not tip over our trash can on trash day. Like, I use it from a hosting perspective, so I may see you at some point, but I don't use it to monitor. I think one thing I'd like to do is actually get a screenshot and put it in my book, which I haven't yet, of like, this is what the camera sees. It sees
so that they
this
can
much.
see.
Yeah, see what is being seen. They know it right away. I think it's hilarious. Every once in a while, Matt will catch a kid when he's looking for the garbage, going up to the thing, going, hi. So it's like, they very well know it's there. It's right next to the door. We don't have one in the backyard. Enjoy yourself. I trust that if you are being too loud, it's never been an issue. And so I don't feel a need to over monitor. I'm trusting you to stay at my place. I don't need to babysit you. And so I think there's a value in having a Ring doorbell situation. But let people live their lives a little bit too.
Yeah. Even for me, I use it a lot. I mean, I totally trust my cleaner, so less now, but at the very beginning, just checking at like 11:15, is the cleaner there? Because at my other rental, it only happened once, but it only takes once to like panic you. In a same day flip, the cleaner, again, this is at our cabin in Boone, and it was an old cleaner, but overslept their alarm. And so if you have a same day flip for a 2,500 square foot cabin and you have like 4 beds worth of laundry to do, if you're 30 minutes late, you can't get it done for the next guest, let alone several hours. And after that, now it's just habit on checkout day for me to check the camera and just see that the cleaner's car is there and then put it away. Okay, we're good. I don't need to follow up with anything. But if I didn't have that camera, there's no way I'd know.
Absolutely. Matt does that too. That's a great point, is he always checks in just to make sure, like, guest checking in today, cleaner came, like, it's just on the checklist kind of thing. So those kind of things, but it's more to hopefully make me a better host, not to
that's right
invade on your life.
That's right. Because to stay on top of everything to run a house, especially if you're doing it from a distance, which a lot of us are, it's just a big ask when you can't physically put your eyes on the property. So it does help with that. Okay, last one. Oh, go ahead.
One other thing our Ring doorbell is super nice for, we lose power quite frequently during storms, when we get nasty storms. That is the surefire way to know that we lost power, and for me to follow up immediately is our Ring doorbell too. And so that's a big, not even the camera, just is there power.
Same thing for me. I will know if I don't have access to the camera. I'm like, oh no, we lost power. I need to look into like when it's going to be restored. Okay, last one, labels inside a cabin.
Like on drawers and stuff where things are?
Anywhere.
Except for I want to put one on my back door. So I think I understand why. I just think it kind of like ruins the aesthetic of it. I like to think I put things where they very easily found. Like, I have a coffee bar, so the filters and everything are right next below it. Here's the cabinet or like fridge, stove. Here's everything for the stove. So I'd like to think everything is where it should be for guests. Towels get laid out in nice piles of like, here's your body towel, here's your hair towel, here's your face towel. So like all of that should be easy enough found. We have a guide for like where our games are in case someone needs it in our guest book. The only reason I wanted it on my door is that our doors are heavy, heavy, heavy doors. And we have a bash on our door frame because you have to lift it to lock it, like to engage the lock. but people will lift it not knowing, engage the lock, and then just try to shut the door. And we had to
Oh,
replace
so it's
the
like a
header on our door.
Yeah. I do think it gets tricky because houses, any of us who live in a house, like we know that there are like weird quirks of that house that you just get used to. And you don't even really think about it until you're hosting
Yeah.
Airbnb. And then you're like, crap, they don't know the quirk of like getting hot water in the shower or like whatever. And it can be an easy way to like give them that context of the quirks of your house. So that totally makes sense.
I think that with the quirks, it's nice to either have a note or to have one auto queued in Airbnb ready to go. Like we already have a note in Airbnb for when someone messages us and goes, your back door doesn't lock. It does. We're going to rewind and try again. But
yes,
we get it every once in a while of where they can't figure out that they need to lift it before they turn the lock. And so you definitely learn very quick what questions you need to have answered. But I think too many labels, maybe if once in a blue moon place, that's just like consistent problem for you to make the guest experience better. But I think just labeling the heck out of your house is overwhelming, and just like when you put too much in your message or your guidebook, not gonna actually get looked at anyway.
that's right. That's right. Okay. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Can you tell people where they can find you?
So you can find us on Hilhaus, AFrame on Instagram. You can find me at Taylor Joe Hildreth on Instagram. Or you can come check out our beautiful AFrame in Crosby, Minnesota on Airbnb. But all that information is on both of our Instagram pages as well.
And we're going to put it in the show notes here too, with links to your listing, your Instagram, all of that good stuff. And I'm going to pin, when this comes out, I'm going to pin the live that we did last year to the top of our reels so that folks can easily find that. Because Taylor and I actually chatted pre-podcast specifically about marketing. So feel free to check that out as well. And take a look at that. Taylor, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I'm sure I'll talk to you soon over on Instagram.
Awesome. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. And if you like what you heard, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or share some of your favorite parts over on Apple Podcasts and a review. If you have any suggestions for guests or feedback, you can always find us on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin and the Chalet Frame, spelled CHALA. See you next week, and thanks for joining us.